Hello, everyone, and welcome to Bible Quest. This is the Tuesday edition. Glad you're able to join us today. And we're going to talk about the prophet Amos. Scott's going to bring out some very interesting points, primarily from chapter 5 and 6. But what's interesting is, as I was saying to Scott before I was talking to you, Scott, I said, I don't recall ever can't remember the last time I was in a study with this prophet. So there's not much I know about him. So I did a little research that he is from the southern kingdom, right? This took place while there was a divided kingdom, maybe towards the middle of the separation. And although he was from the southern kingdom, God sent him to the northern kingdom. His mission was to teach, or I should say, preach to Israel. They were going after foreign gods. Their religion was just, they were doing it. They were very religious people, but it was just not right with God. It was empty, if I can use that word. The way they treated each other was, today would use the word social injustice. And what you can correct me if I'm wrong on this, but they were looking forward to the day of the Lord as if it would be a day of victory. But I got the impression from chapter 5 that that's not the way it's going to turn out.
Right.
So rather than me go any further than that, just a little bit of overview of when and where he is and where he's from. How you doing, Scott?
I'm doing all right, Drew. How are you doing today?
Doing very good. So was I off on that at all? Does that seem pretty close?
Oh, just on the date, I would say it's toward the end of the divided kingdom.
Not the middle. Okay.
Divided kingdom starts around, if I remember, Solomon dies around 931. The northern kingdom falls around 721, 722. So they got about 200 years, but Amos is like in the last 30 to 35 years before they go. So he might be like just 30 years, maybe a little more before party's over for the North.
Now, you mentioned the years, and that's a long time ago, but Amos, his message has application for us today.
You are absolutely right.
We need to learn. Go ahead.
A lot of the things that Israel was guilty of, Americans are guilty of.
We are. Yeah. And what's interesting is, before you get going, they have their history starting with being delivered out of Egypt. They rejected God and they saw what happened. They spent 40 years in the wilderness. Then you got these other the period of judges, and they go up and down in their righteousness. And it's all based around idolatry. When they left Egypt, they just brought their idolatry with them. Here we are now, several centuries later. You're about to be judged. Did we learn anything?
Apparently not. They have not. And in Judah, occasionally you have a good king in Judah. And occasionally the good king stays good. But even some of the good kings end up going south at the end. But in the north, where Amos is sent to from the south, not a single good king. In the entire, from Jeroboam all the way to the end, not a single good king.
Now, I just thought I had a question. What was that question? Oh, no, I forgot it. It went in and it came. Oh, here it is. So you mentioned Judah, and the southern kingdom consisted of the tribe of Benjamin and Judah, and the northern kingdom consisted of the other 10 tribes, right?
The northern 10 tribes.
Okay. When they were captured by Assyria, they were assimilated among other nations, and they gave up and lost their true worship. I heard the term, I don't know if it's accurate or not, the term lost tribes. Is that meaning that those 10 tribes were lost and never found again?
So there was, going back a couple hundred years ago, or maybe 100 years ago, there's been premillennialists who have tried to say things like Britain is the lost tribes, or just some nonsense. But
that proves my point that we don't know where those tribes are.
well, not everybody was lost, because think about it in Luke 2. When Joseph and Mary bring Jesus, the baby, to Jerusalem for the sacrifice of the firstborn, there was an old prophetess there that prophesied about it. Her name was Anna. And if you recall, what tribe was she from? Asher.
Okay. So there were some
10 tribes. So what's left is mostly the tribe of Judah, which is why they end up being the province of Judea, and why it gets shortened to Jews. But not everybody, not all of the Jews were actually of Judea. Paul was from the tribe of Benjamin. Paul was the tribe of Benjamin, which were not in the northern 10. But you have Anna, who was from the tribe of Asher. So let's put it this way: the two captivities. The Assyrians, I want to describe this really quick because I want us to get into Amos 5 and 6. But you had the Assyrians, the Babylonians, and the Persians. And I'm going to give 3 symbols to kind of remember about it. So the Assyrians played the shell game. Remember in New York City, the guys would be out on the street doing the shell game? Which one is it under, right? And you lose track. That's kind of what the Assyrians did with people, because they would go and they would take the people of Israel and they'd put them over here. And they'd take people, put them over here, that were over here, and they would put them over there. And that led eventually to the Samaritans. What that does, it breaks up national identity. So the Babylonians were more like kidnappers. They just come and they get you and they take you away. And then the Persians were much more noble. They're just like, hey, everybody go back home, build your temples, pay your taxes.
Yeah, we still own you, but you can go home.
The Babylonians did this. Ezekiel, Daniel, Shadrach, Meshach, Abednego. But then 70 years later, they go back when the Persians say, everybody go back, but pay your taxes. Now, the way that this has to do with identity a little bit is this. In Daniel's day, in Shadrach and Meshach, Abednego, and Ezekiel's day, when they go back after the 70 years, you remember there were some old men that remembered the first temple.
Yes, they cried when they saw that.
Yeah, because they were brought over in like the 580s. And so, but the first group was taken about 605, then some more, and then some more. But some of them remember decades earlier seeing the temple. But when the Babylonians took over Assyria, when they took over Assyria, that land had the northern tribes in it. So they're also under Babylonian captivity. But when Babylon falls, Judah has only been there 20, 60, 70 years, depending on when you were taken. But the northern tribe, they've been there since 722.
Oh, yeah.
They've been there 200 years. So, 200 years ago, I might have had an ancestor from France or something, but you don't see me planning to go back to France.
No.
But if you take somebody away from their land during their own generation, they still remember that. So the Babylonians.
So let me ask you, because we're studying Ezra now on Sunday morning.
Yeah.
I'm not leading the class, one of the other fellows is, but not all of them went back to Jerusalem to help with the work.
Right.
Would you say that those one that stayed back where Babylon was, where Assyria, where the empire was primarily, would you say they were from the older generation? Or not necessarily in that case?
No, because when you're reading in Haggai, it mentions those that could remember, the older ones that were, but most of them weren't old.
Okay.
And so, but you've got if you and I were taken away by the Chinese and put in China, we might spend a few years hoping to get back to the U.S.
Right.
But if we stayed there 200 years later, and our great grandkids are over there, they're not
Chinese
in going back. But some were back, like Anna of the tribe of Asher.
Okay.
But that's the fallout. The time we're in is what you introduced us with. The divided kingdom is still standing, and there's a lot of rich people. There's poor people up there, but there's rich people taking advantage of the poor people. And Amos goes up and makes a proclamation, and he lets them know, your time is up.
The poor people are God's people, though. The Jews that separated themselves from the South, they're still considered Jews.
Well, the ones they're all Israelites.
That's what I meant. Yeah.
Sometimes we call the South, of course, Judah, and the North, Israel, but they're all descendants of Abraham. They're all descendants of the people that made the covenant with God at Mount Sinai. They should all be obeying God. After Solomon died, it split because you remember Rehoboam and his nonsense. And so Jeroboam ends up here, Rehoboam ends up here. And we're going down through history. They will both fall, but the first one to fall is the more wicked one, Israel. And this is kind of like one of their last warnings coming up, letting them know it's
over.
So let's begin here in the middle of the book, Amos 5. Hear this word that I take up over you in lamentation, O house of Israel. And picture this, this trimmer of trees or whatever he was, and shepherd from the South that's come up here making these announcements. And he was not from the school of the prophets. Historically, that's not been his role in life. But he's kind of a John the Baptist character. Repent.
He was a farmer, wasn't he? A farmer.
He'd said, I think it was sycamore trees. So if you go back to verse 1 of chapter 1, the words of Amos, who was among the shepherds of Tekoa. And he says, I was not a prophet. My father was not a prophet. And he, dealt with these trees. But now it's time to deliver a message of God. And let's look at this part of it.
Go ahead.
Hear this word that I take up over you in lamentation, O house of Israel. Fallen, no more to rise, is the virgin Israel, forsaken on her land with none to raise her up. For thus says the Lord God, the city that went out 1,000 will have 100 left, and that which went out 100 shall have 10 left to the house of Israel. For thus says the Lord to the house of Israel, seek me and live. But do not seek Bethel. Do not enter into Gilgal or cross over to Beersheba, for Gilgal shall go into exile, and Bethel shall come to nothing. Seek the Lord and live. Let us break out like fire in the house of Joseph, and it devour with none to quench it for Bethel. O you who turn justice to wormwood and cast down righteousness to the earth. He who made the Pleiades and Orion, the stars, and turns the deep darkness into morning and darkens the day into night, who calls for the waters of the sea and pours them out on the surface of the earth. The Lord is his name. Yahweh is his name, who makes destruction flash forth against the strong, so that destruction comes upon the fortress. So bold sounds of pronunciation, and now he's going to start getting specific. So Drew, how about reading 10 through 13 for us, please?
10 through 13. Before we do, though, am I correct in understanding that at this time in their history, they're wealthy and they're pretty well structured physically?
The wealthy are wealthy and the poor are poor. So one of the expressions in the prophets is that they were picking the dust off the scalps of the poor. So I remember years ago working with this young couple. He was a fugitive. They were both living together. They weren't married. He'd been on drugs previously. In fact, the charge involved cocaine and some other thing, impersonating an officer, various things. But I started studying with him, and the same weekend, baptized him, married him, and then a few days later took him in to the courthouse where he turned himself in. And I was able to arrange with the police and let him know the changes making his life, and they recommended probation, so that was good. But I remember when dealing with them, they didn't have a lot of income, but they wanted to get some furniture, so they went down to this rent-to-own place. And he said, "Hey, I got all this furniture. It's only $19, a week or whatever." And I'm like, adding it up. Did they tell you how many weeks you have to pay? No, and but he was going to end up paying like $2,000
for used furniture.
For some furniture. At the time, it was equivalent to mobile home furniture that cost about $500 at the time.
Okay. Yeah.
Now, there's lots of businesses that prey upon the poor. They, buy now, no credit, slow credit. We don't care. Upside down on your, we don't care. Yeah, but when you walk out, you're going to be more upside down on the next car and stuff. And they picked it up at auction for $600, and they're selling it to you for $5,000. And after they've got your first couple of payments, the rest. It's just there's people that still take advantage of the poor. Now,
and that's what's going on here.
So that's some of the people are lying around on beds of ivory, drinking wine out of bowls, and other people are just being oppressed. So it's kind of in James. Remember when James talked about the rich, which make
Chapter
you mow. I'm thinking of chapter 5, where it says the rich that make you mow their fields and then hold back your.
Yes.
So let's suppose I'll be the bad guy here. This is years ago, and you're a poor guy, and I've hired you to come mow my field, and you're out there 12 hours, and you're using a sickle and everything, and that I gave you. At the end of the day, you think you're going to get your denarii or whatever. And I say, all right. And then I just give you this. You say, what? I thought I got a denarii. I said, well, there was the sickle rent. You used my sickle. You drank my water. There was the work permit fee that I charge every new labor, that type of thing. There's always nothing wrong with people making money where it's a win-win.
Right.
There's lots of action. Both people go away satisfied because I wanted your product more than I wanted this cash. And they want that cash more than they want that product. It's a win-win.
Fair exchange.
That's not what's going on here. So let's read.
Okay. So 10 through what?
10 through 13. No, okay, 15. 15.
Okay. They hate him who reproves in the gate, and they abhor him who speaks the truth. Therefore, because you trample on the poor and you exact taxes of grain from him, you have built houses of hewn stone, but you shall not dwell in them. You have planted pleasant vineyards, but you shall not drink their wine. For I know how many are your transgressions and how great are your sins. You who afflict the righteous, who take a bribe and turn aside the needy in the gate. Therefore, he who is prudent will keep silent in such a time, for it is an evil time. Seek good and do not evil, and not evil, that you may live. And so the Lord, the God of hosts, will be with you, as you have said. Hate evil and love good, and establish justice in the gate. It may be that the Lord, the God of hosts, will be gracious to the remnant of Joseph.
All right, so let's start off. How do they feel about Amos or others that point out their sin?
You hate him. You hate him you hate the guy who's reproving, pointing us out there. The guy at the gate.
Yeah. humans have not changed very much. When people reprove the sins of America today, how do people tend to react?
Negatively against you.
They hate it. They hate it. And then here it talks about how they're abusing the poor, et cetera, et cetera. And by the way, Jesus said, the poor you will have with you always. And
Right.
and he talked about be content. If you've got food and clothing, be content with that. 1 Timothy 6 says, for the rich among Christians, don't be high-minded. Don't think you're better than other people. Don't have your hope set on your riches. And since you have a lot, you can be generous a lot, and help other people. So there's always going to be rich people. There's going to be poor people. But this is an ugly situation where they've just been trampling the poor. And for a bribe, they'll rule against the poor. And so this is not what some people call today, where you agree to go work a job and you want the job, but then you start complaining and whining and different things. This is really abusive behavior, which still exists today and existed back then. And that you mentioned this already, verse 14, seek good and not evil, and then the Lord will be with you as you have said. They had, what you mentioned was that they were wanting the day of the Lord to come. And they also said, oh, the Lord is with us. The Lord is with us. Amos saying, no, he's not. Start doing the right thing and he will be with you like you say he is. Yeah. And this verse reminds me of something. So, Drew, you know that I lived in East Europe after the wall came down. We moved to Prague, helped plant to work there in Prague back after the wall came down. And while I was there, I picked up some World War II items because Prague had been occupied by the Nazis. So I've got belt buckles and belts by World War II German soldiers. And guess what their belt buckle has on it? It's got a swastika.
Yeah, I was going to say a swastika.
And Gott mit uns.
Oh, what does that mean?
God with us.
Oh.
Gott mit uns. God is with us. So the Nazis are walking around with belt buckles that said, God is with us. He wasn't. Well, this is not a new thing. The people of Israel are up there saying, God is with us. And Amos is saying, no, he's not. If you want God to be with you, you need to straighten up and start doing what's right. But let's continue. Verse 18. Let's drop down to that. Woe to you who desire the day of the Lord. This is what you had referred to before. And, there's people today say, oh, I wish the Lord would do something about all this sin. When people talk about suffering in the world, usually what they're talking about is the people worse than them that have created suffering, not us who have created suffering. Because we've all sinned. We've all hurt people. We've all caused hardship or suffering, in one way or another on other people. That's not what we're wanting God to bring judgment down on. We want
pointed at them.
Yeah. Why doesn't God do something about this? Well, when God does do something about sin at Judgment Day, it's everybody.
All of us.
Yeah. The child murderers will be judged. The kidnappers and rapists will be judged, but so will the gossips, and so will the arrogant, and so will the hypocrites, and so will the self-righteous, and so will the everything.
Liars.
Yes. All right. So verse 18. Woe to you who desire the day of the Lord. Why would you have the day of the Lord? It is darkness and not light. As if a man fled from a lion and a bear met him, or went into a house and leaned against the wall and a serpent bit him. Is not the day of the Lord darkness and not light, and no gloom and no brightness in it? So this is a pretty powerful image. You can see this guy, he's running from a lion. Oh no, that lion's gonna get me. He's getting away from the lion. He runs into a bear. He makes it into a house. He lays his hand on the wall. The serpent bites him. He said, that's what it's going to be like. And it was.
Wow.
The Assyrians would come, and all these fat cats with their ivory couches and playing the harps and drinking wine out of bowls in their summer houses and their winter houses. They're going to be taken, shaved, walking barefoot, and chained up and with fish hooks and stuff. And the ones that aren't killed,
Right.
and just hauled away.
And they're being very religious during this time period, as if you're gonna continue with verse 21.
They'll continue their rituals. So read for us, please, 21 through 24.
I despise your feasts, and I take no delight in your solemn assemblies. Even though you offer me your burnt offerings and grain offerings, I will not accept them. And the peace offerings of your fattened animals, I will not look upon them. Take away from me the noise of your songs, to the melody of your harps. I will not listen. But let justice roll down like waters, and righteousness like an ever-flowing stream.
All right. So this will be a good spot for us to stop. But let's talk about these verses for a moment. We're observing feasts. We're having assemblies. We're giving.
We're offering you our animals. We're sacrificing our very own animals to you, Lord.
Yeah. And he's like, I don't want it. Stop.
I'm not even going to look at it.
Yeah. And even after the Babylonian captivity ends and they come back, and the good people come back and rebuild the temple under that's going to be the walls later.
Zerubbabel,
they rebuild the temple, and then later, years later, they'll rebuild the wall and stuff. But by the time of Malachi, and this is Jews who have come back, and they're worshiping not in Gilgal, but in Jerusalem, where they're supposed to. But by that time, they're doing what? Oh, what a weariness it is. And they're bringing a blind or three-legged sheep. You know, it's like, oh, I've got to take a sacrifice. Oh, well, that one, that one needed to be cold anyway. You know, let's get rid of that one. And in that book, I wish somebody just closed the doors, just put out the fire. I don't
by this time, they had finally given up idolatry.
Yes, by that time.
By that time, they've given it up.
But there's still this problem.
Yeah. I'm wondering, maybe when they were in idolatry, they didn't have to give the best of their animals, and they could do what they wanted in that worship.
Whatever, over and over through the Bible, we see worship offered that's not acceptable to God. Cain's worship was not acceptable to God. Samuel rebuked Saul for, instead of just completely destroying the Amalekites, oh, but I brought the best of this. I was going to do this big sacrifice. He said, does God want sacrifices and fat of rams as much as he just wants you to obey? Listen and obey. Jesus will say to the Pharisees in Mark 7, in Isaiah prophesied of you, in vain does this people worship me, because they're following the precepts of men and breaking the commandments of God. So our worship can be worthless because we're not obeying God, because we're obeying our rules instead of God's and what we want instead of God's, or because our heart's not in it. You know, oh, what a weariness it is. And you hear, you know, like think about how people give financially. If I'm like, oh, here's something left in my pocket that I didn't, that's not a sacrifice. You know, it's just, maybe this is a poor analogy, but I'll go ahead and offer it. Imagine that your family is going to throw you a birthday party. You don't necessarily want a birthday party, but they're going to throw you a birthday party. Okay, well, if they're all there and they're singing happy birthday, and if they've made your favorite cake, and people have driven several hours to be there, well, you're really happy to see them all. But if you see the group text, if they accidentally include you and they're like, oh, how long is it going to last? Quickly can I leave? Well, what's the bare minimum we have to pitch in? I'll pitch in a buck. What would you say?
Yeah. Do I even have to bring a gift?
Yeah. It's like, just text back, hey, never mind.
Don't bother.
Don't bother. And here, with all their other sins, that they're still going through rituals, and God just no, I reject it. You know what you need to be doing? Let justice roll down like waters, righteousness like an ever-flowing stream. Seek good and not evil. And that'll be a good point for us to stop, and we'll pick up with Amos again next week.
Yes, I look forward to that, because there is more applications. That we face the same thing today. Even I'm talking about us that claim we're religious and we're serving God and worshiping Him, and we got to look at it. Well,
Yes.
Scott, thanks for bringing this topic up. I appreciate it, and I look forward to seeing you next week. If anyone's watching the video and you want to respond to us, you can go in the comment section under the video, give us your comments, or you can go to BibleQuest.org, fill out the contact us form there, and let us know what's on your mind. We'll talk about topics maybe you want us to talk about. Thanks for being here, Scott. Good seeing you, and I look forward to seeing you next time.
Good to see you, Drew. Thanks.